We've got our next guest, man. I was just talking to her off screen, and we always have something to talk about. Courtney, welcome to the party, man. How are you?
Hey, April, how are
I'm
you?
awesome. Thanks, man. For those of you who don't know, I think I mentioned right before the break that Courtney's probably been on like 8 of or 7 of the last like 8 years or something. I know last year was like the first time in a long time that I think you weren't able to make it, if I'm remembering correctly. Oh no, it moved. That's what
Yeah, it
happened.
moved
That's
because
right.
the
And then you
weather
did
like
get to
knocked us out or
yes.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a power outage at the studio, and then I moved, and I think you were able to join on the second date, but the first one I don't think you were.
No,
I
no, no.
remember.
What happened was is I ended up not getting to do it because I wasn't able to go on the second date when we moved it to, and it was like we got knocked out or whatever because of the
Yeah.
weather. And so that,
Well,
yeah,
see, that's not
that sucked.
fair. Yeah, because you were there, but then you weren't. Dang it. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
so we've been following Courtney's journey since the very beginning. The first time you came on ever, you were in the thick of your treatment. You were
Oh
bald,
yeah.
and you were right in the middle of it. Everything was still fresh for you. And now,
Mhm.
how many years out are we now, Courtney?
Well, I think I'm 8. Chemo brain still sticks with you, but yeah, it's been 8 years, which is crazy. That's like insane to me. And with having triple negative breast cancer, that's a really big deal, right? Because they say once you hit, I think it's like what, 5 years or something, they say, that means you're probably going to be in the clear of reoccurrence and stuff. So I've never had any kind of reoccurrence. And I'm very, very thankful for that.
Well, and Dr. O was on just a little bit ago, and she said 5 years, the likelihood's really low. 8 years, it's just not even going to happen. So if you're at 8 years,
Oh, I
I
missed
know,
that.
yeah, you're gonna have to go back and watch the replay because she talked about that.
Yeah.
She's talked about that on a few of our broadcasts. And when I hit the 8 years, that's when I was allowed to be let go from her. Like I was going like once a
Oh,
year or something
yeah.
like that, and then I was finally
Yeah.
allowed to let go. But one of the things I want to talk with you about, Courtney, is we talked a lot with Dr. O about all the trials that are going on. There's just so
Oh,
many
yeah.
trials that are happening, but you were on an earlier one. So can you
Yes.
walk everybody through a little bit when you went through triple negative breast cancer, how you ended up in a trial?
Yeah, really my breast surgeon is who suggested it to me prior to my oncologist. The breast surgeon was the one who had the ins and outs of all of that and knew what was going on with it. But the trial that I was in, it was for a drug called veliparib, which I believe now it was approved, and I think it's called Olipar, something with an O. But anyways, it did get approved. And what that is it's a PARP inhibitor. And I'm sure Dr. O would be much more
Yeah,
knowledgeable than
she
me
talked
on
a
it.
little bit about
But
PARP inhibitors on our call a little bit ago. Yeah.
yeah. And so I was in a blind study. So I still don't know for certain if I got it. However, when I was going through treatment, my oncology nurse that became like my chemo mama, I always called her my chemo mama because she really was like my mom there. I mean, I had my mom there beside me the whole time, but then I had my chemo mom too. And she taught me a lot about like those PARP inhibitors and all that good stuff. But basically it's a PARP inhibitor. All of us have like PARP in our body. It's a certain protein that we produce. And if we can take those inhibitors, it will actually, so basically, I think from what I understand correctly, is PARP helps the cells like rejuvenate themselves. And so we don't want cancer cells to rejuvenate themselves. And so if they can inhibit that, they can kill those cells off. And it does work. And with me being in a blind study and everything, my nurse, she had told me, she was like, listen, we don't know, and I will never know. I will never know if I actually got it or not. However, because of the side effects that I had during chemo, they were like 99% sure that I was getting it. Just because I was very, very sick. Um, and of course, I got it went along with oh gosh, what was the names of all the things? Lord, it's been so long now, but
Like
and
adriamycin, Cytoxin,
yes,
Taxol.
I had AC that, but I did that second. So that we did what was the, oh gosh, It's so awful. I mean, it's not awful. It's a good thing
It's
that I don't
great that you
remember it.
can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not like dwelling on it anymore. I know for a while there, like like you kind of get caught up in it for the first couple of years after, and it's like everything's so fresh in your mind. But now life goes on, and I feel so blessed to just still be here that I don't even think about those drugs hardly anymore, which I think is awesome. But yeah, I mean, I went through just the basic chemo and stuff that you're going to go through, plus the PARP inhibitor, which was called veliparib. So that was a pill, and I had to take that along with the infusions that I was getting. And I don't know how they're doing it now, but I know for me, when I was getting those infusions, and I'm sure it's probably pretty much the same. I mean, you're there like all day, you better knock out, you better block out 12 hours for your day of sitting there in the chemo chair, getting chemo. And I'm sure it was probably like that for you too.
Yeah, I mean the first rounds of chemo were longer, but then they got
Mm-hmm.
shorter because I think they introduce it slower at first, and then as you
Yes.
get deeper into chemo, they give it to you faster. But I do remember sometimes. But either way, even if you're not sitting in the chemo chair, definitely wipe out the whole day if you're going to chemo because you're going to be too
Right.
exhausted anyway. It's just exhausting.
Yeah,
Something.
it totally is.
Yeah,
Totally
yeah.
exhausting. Yeah. And then there's the whole, for me, I feel like all the steroid that they pump you full of, on top of the chemo drugs. I mean, I literally felt like I was crawling out of my skin at night when I would come home from
Right.
chemo. And I know even now, like if I get a bad cold or something like that, and my doctor's like, hey, you need steroid. I'm like, do give me anything but steroid. Like I
Right.
cannot stand that feeling. It brings you back to that moment, in
Right.
time of being, being on steroid. And I can't stand it, man. It makes me feel awful.
Yeah.
So
Well, hey, what qualified you for the trials that you were a part of? How did you have to
so
qualify?
yeah, you had to be under 40 at the time, which I was. I was diagnosed on my 36th birthday or the day after my 36th birthday. Um, and so you had to be under 40, and then you also had to be BRCA1 positive, which I am. So I was able to get the testing done, which with the clinical trial, they ended up paying for all of my chemo, and then they paid for all of my testing to be done for like the BRCA stuff, which at that particular time, you couldn't run, BRCA testing through insurance. So it was like really, really expensive to get that testing done. But because of the clinical trial, I was able to get it done for free. And then, of course, when it came back positive, I was like the perfect candidate for that specific trial. And the crazy thing about it was we didn't have insurance. Derek was working in the dental field at the time, I believe. And then he's also a musician. And then I was, always been in the hair and makeup world. So I didn't really have insurance. And so this was like literally a life saving miracle blessing from above for me, to be able to be in a clinical trial. Plus, it was a no brainer for me because I felt like, and they give you the option. They're like, is this something that you want to do? I mean, they're going to offer it to you, but you have to like commit to this, and you have to kind of sign your life away for at least 10 years when you do these clinical trials.
Because
And you're not
they
allowed.
want updates all throughout and all of this, right?
Yes. Yes, they do. And then they also, they don't, you have to sign that you won't take any like herbal supplements of any sort, because they don't want anything to affect the treatment. They want everything to be completely based off of what they're giving you and how they're giving it, and it's given very specific. And I know even like when I had the AC, oh gosh, they call it red devil for a reason, and it really is the devil. And that particular drug, I was so sick by the time that they gave me AC that they had to like dose reduce me. And you could only dose reduce, I think, twice on the trial. So they ended up having to stop my AC treatment. I only got 3, and I wasn't allowed to do the 4th one because I think it's probably still the same. You get 4 rounds of it. But my 4th one, they stopped, and they said, because they told me, they were like, we're going to kill you. Like, you're not going to, I mean, because and that's what chemo is. I mean, it's literally bringing you to the point of almost death to save your life, you know?
Yeah,
So,
it seems a little twisted, but that they're able to do it in such a controlled, environment, is helpful, so it doesn't
yeah,
kill you.
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, but and some people do die from chemo,
Yeah.
I mean, they do, it can kill you, but it also is, I think with triple negative, we're very lucky in triple negative that chemo works so well against it, because there's a lot of breast cancers and other cancers out there that chemo just doesn't work for. I mean, it might hold it off for a little while, but I know with triple negative, it's definitely, kind of like the first defense that they always say, like, hey, let's do chemo. I know for me, it was chemo first and then surgery, so they want to wipe out all the cancer first before they did any surgery.
And so, talk about your surgery a little bit now. What did you opt for? I mean, I know, but I feel like I don't
Yeah,
know.
so I had everything taken. And then I also had a hysterectomy as well. And the
And
reason I did that was because of being BRCA1 positive. And
right.
so my doctor just kind of looked at me and said, hey, it's not if, it's when you get ovarian cancer. You're BRCA1 positive, you've had triple negative breast cancer, it's extremely aggressive. She said, you will get ovarian cancer one day. And she was like, if you were my daughter, and that's what I asked her. Her and I had this long conversation about it. And I said, if I was your daughter, what would you tell me? And she said, I would tell you that you already have one child and you don't need to be worried about what might be. You need to take care of yourself so you can be here for your child that you do have. So it was a really hard decision. And it was definitely something that, I didn't realize that I was going to be, so distraught over until after it actually happened. And then after the opportunity of having another child was taken from me, it was really sad, to be honest. Like, I didn't know that I was going to miss that so much, because in the moment, like, I was just trying to, like, protect myself and help my child, help my child that I had now. I mean, my daughter was only 4 years old at the time, when I was diagnosed. And but it's definitely something that has brought a lot of sadness into my life to not be able to have another child, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's a hard decision to make, but I know I've heard Dr. O talk about that specifically. That if you have the BRCA1 gene, that yeah, getting a hysterectomy is the best course of action. And a lot of women, even that didn't have a hysterectomy, that were maybe thrown into menopause early, has the same effects. Like I remember,
Yeah.
like me, me with kids. Are you crazy? But even still, like once it was taken away, it is this weird feeling, right? It's like, wait, now there's
Yeah.
no going back. Like for me, I'm like, there's not going to be a mini me. I mean, I think people are mostly thankful about that, but but yeah, there's a definite grieving process with that for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there is. And I'm over it now, but I mean, it was something that I really struggled with for a long time, and of course now my child is she's such a go-getter herself, and going all the time. I don't know how I would even be able to take care of more than one. So, I'm very, very blessed. And she's the best of both worlds, because she's like a girl, but then she's so athletic and like, into everything like that. So she's just awesome.
She is awesome. I can speak firsthand on that. She is very awesome. So after
Thank
you
you.
had your surgery and everything, how was your recovery? Just to share it with those folks who are watching.
Yeah, it was hard. I'm not gonna lie, and sugarcoat this at all, because it's hard, I think the biggest part for me was just I really, really liked my breast, to be honest with you. I never ever wanted to have a breast augmentation or anything. Like, I loved the way I looked. I've always been super, super feminine. And, when you first go through it, they put these expanders in. Well, let me tell you about that. That's uncomfortable, right? You got to wear these hard things that are stretching out your skin. And I would have to go into the surgeon's office and he would have to pump them full of air to stretch my skin more. And that didn't really hurt, but it's just uncomfortable, you know? Um, just the whole process is uncomfortable. And then you kind of feel like, I mean, at one point, because I'm very like, you know how feminine I am. I can't even talk tonight. Feminine I am.
Yep.
And, you know, like, I think that a lot of women, we identify with our hair, you know, we identify with our hair being long and
Right.
boobs and like whatever. And I felt like, oh my gosh. Then I had a hysterectomy. I'm like, all right,
Yeah,
well,
what's left of me that makes me a woman almost, right?
right. Like
Yeah.
that's how I felt. I was like, you know, and I felt like, and I also really felt like, you know, uncomfortable about getting undressed in front of my husband and the intimacy aspect of it. I know I heard the other girl talking about like being at a retreat and talking about these problems that you have. Like, you don't really have anybody to talk to about that kind of stuff, except for somebody that's been through it, because it's really hard. I mean, you don't, it, it's it's a it's like losing a limb, you know, and you know, you've had them for as long as you can remember, and then you lose it and it's like a part of you. So you have a grieving process of losing your breast as well, you know?
Yeah, totally. It's true. A lot of people don't talk a lot about that and about that transformation that you kind of go through and coming to grips with that the physical change. There's so much
Yes.
physical change that happens too. I feel like chemo ages you, you know. It's
Mhm.
like you know, I don't look anything I feel like I did before chemo. Like my eyebrows never
Yeah.
grew back fully, you know, just various
Me
things like
too.
that, you know.
Yeah.
It's so weird, but, like, you know, it's almost like this rebirth in this new body, you know,
Mhm.
is what it feels like.
It
But
does for sure. And
mhm,
I always tell people that I'm like, and that was the hardest part for me, was figuring out who I was after chemo, because I remember who I was before. And so you have this before version of yourself, right? And then you have the chemo version of yourself. And then you have the after chemo version of yourself. And it's like, I think I'm a little bit of both now, you know, because, you know, even though cancer was, you know, it's a traumatizing thing to go through. And it was very traumatizing for me. But I also am very grateful for that time in my life, because um just like what the girl was saying that was on previous, um it, you know, you do appreciate the little things in life a little bit more, and or a lot more, and you realize what really is important in life. And then just the closeness that I got with family, with friends, and you know, the Holy Spirit above all. Like, I grew so much in my faith. It was incredible. And so sometimes I even find myself just kind of missing that time, only because, not that I miss the cancer and I ever want that back, I don't, but
no.
just missing that closeness, um or living your life like you're dying, honestly, living your life like you're dying. And I wish that everybody in this world would live more like that, because I think we would be much happier, you know,
Yeah,
to
well,
be
it's just
honest.
yeah, it just puts everything into perspective. It really
Yeah.
does, and like you said,
Yeah.
you've got that like whenever you're going through breast cancer, there's just a certain camaraderie that happens among other survivors, or you know, even like you said, your friends and family. It's just a closeness that you don't really experience after that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you gain the perspective, which affects your whole life. And again, to me, it's part of that whole rebirth thing. You know, it's not
Hmm.
just a physical rebirth, but it's also an emotional and a mental rebirth. When you go through breast cancer, you come out the other side,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember going through that too, Courtney, where it's like as soon as you finish chemo and you're done with all your treatments or whatever, and you're just kind of sitting there and you're like, okay, now what am I supposed to do? Like
Yeah.
there's no doctor appointment that explains that, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's like you're in such a fight mode, and then everything stops. It just stops abruptly. And you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? You know, like, I need to keep fighting, right? So then you kind of go through that emotion of like, I need to keep fighting. And then everybody sees that you don't have cancer anymore. and they kind of leave you. They're kind of like, okay, she's fine now. We can
Yeah,
back up.
yeah.
We can leave her. And it's like, one thing that I want to like tell people is that people that go through any kind of cancer, breast cancer, whatever, don't leave them when they've come into remission. Like, they need you even more then. Like, I feel like it's so important to stick around and be there for them in the aftermath, because the aftermath of cancer can be even harder than like going through the chemo and all that kind of stuff, right? Because you got to pick your life back up after cancer and figure out what the heck just happened, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, also just like you carry around this fear in the back of your mind for years to follow, where
Yeah.
you're just like, anything that happens, you're like, what was that? What was that? But yeah, there was like a period where you sort of, and it makes sense. It's not like we're ragging on the support group.
No.
It makes sense, you know, that there's a start and a finish. So that's normal, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, when somebody passes away, you know, you hear from everybody, and then after the funeral, you don't as much, you know.
Right.
But when you think about it, the support is still needed, even beyond that, because it's hard to pick up your life and start over after going through something so traumatic. Really
Yeah,
is.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
is. And I'm still learning every day. I feel like that every day is kind of a surrender. I have to just hand it over to God and let him take the wheel, you know,
Mhm.
because it is. I mean, you know, you have to learn to do that. And one thing though, that I do, you know, like on a very positive note from this is, you know, it's been, you know, 8 years now. And so I don't think about cancer every day anymore. And I think that's amazing. And when you first go through it, you know, you think about it a lot. And you have that fear of, you know, any little ache, pain, whatever. Oh my gosh, is that cancer? You know, any little lump here or there, is that cancer? But I don't do that anymore, and I don't freak out anymore. And I think that cancer like taught me like a lot of patience, and it taught me about not being in control of my life, because I was kind of a control freak before. and you know, it's the most out of control. You know, you do not have control with cancer, right? So um it really teaches well, I know for me, it really taught me patience and how to, you know, just overcome that control, and to hand it over to God, and allow him to take the wheel,
Yeah, that's so
you know?
true, man. I totally feel that too. Just to let go, you know, and it's scary, but it's
Mhm.
also freeing when you're able to do that, and just have faith, you know, in your trust in something else. It's so much more better, you know. So
Yeah, yeah.
I know where you're coming from too with the whole control thing. So yeah, I got you.
It's probably the artsy part of us or
Yeah,
something,
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
It must be. It must be. And I always like to ask you, like, when was the last time you went to an oncologist? Do you still go at all, or you never go anymore?
I mean, honestly, like, no, I really don't go to see her unless I like absolutely have to. You know, I haven't been in quite a while. I still see you know, I see my internist, and I check up with him all the time, and you know, check my blood and stuff like that with him. But I really don't go to her unless I'm like, okay, something doesn't feel right, you know, and I'm having one of those freak out moments. But to be honest, I haven't had one of those freak out moments. I think the last time I had it was like maybe like 2020. And the only reason I know that is because it was like right before COVID. And so I think that was the last time I had like a major freak out, like I need to go see my oncologist, you know?
All right.
but um, but yeah, I mean, I just don't feel the need to do it. And because I had a double mastectomy, like they don't require that you get mammograms anymore either. So I think like everything is just done through blood work. You know, they check everything to make sure everything's functioning right, you know, which is great. And then, you know, for me too, you know, my dad was going through cancer when I was going through cancer. And so you know, I kind of like, you know, the past few years have been kind of hard with that because he did pass away. And so we've dealt with a lot of things like that. So I just haven't, you know, been too worried about myself, to be honest.
Well,
So
like you said, it's good that you're not thinking about it as much as you
yeah,
used to, and that you're just kind of cruising along with life, and you're 8 years out, which means you're cured.
Yeah.
Right on.
That's awesome,
You know?
man. I love
I
that.
know, I know. I'll have to make that clip for you, just send it to you every now and then.
Yes. Well, like I had some really incredible things that happened to me during my whole like cancer journey. And one of my friends told me too, it was like, cancer is not your predicament, it's your assignment, right? And I think that's so true because my assignment at the time, and was like, hey, like I'm gonna get through this, I'm gonna prove God's grace. And now, I mean, I'm like proving it for real,
No
so
doubt, no doubt.
it's like, and you are too. I mean, gosh, how many
Thanks.
years has it been for you
I
now?
know, I was trying to do math earlier. I think it's like 13 and a half or something. I know, it's
Wow. See,
crazy.
girl,
Crazy.
you're cured
I
too.
know, dude. I know. I need to get a shirt or something. Like, I feel like we should. I
Yes,
feel like we should get a shirt
cured.
for this. You know.
We should get one that's like cured, but it like looks like the Cure, like the band
Oh,
or
there you
something.
go. And we could come up with like some picture of that guy. What's his name? Robert somebody, and like
Yeah.
like make him like way more feminine, even more. And then just that'll
Yes.
that'll be like the mascot.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it. That would be awesome.
We're off the rails. Courtney, do you have any words for anybody who is newly diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer?
Yeah. Just surrender. Surrender to it. Surrender it all to God. Give it to him and allow him to do it for you, because that's what he's there for, is to take it all from you. And allow people to take care of you, allow people to be there with you and take care of you, and give yourself a lot of grace. Give yourself a lot of grace.
That is some.
And I think that's it.
That is some solid advice, girl. Totally. Well, I saw Sarah a minute ago. I hope that she's all done with her skateboarding.
Oh yeah, did she walk? She walked behind me.
She opened
a
it,
minute ago,
yeah,
didn't she?
for just a second.
Yeah.
We were like, rock star in the background, word up.
Yeah, rock star in the background. Yeah.
It may be cool.
She is a little rock star, that's for sure. She's taking me to France.
That's so cool. Congratulations on all that. That's amazing.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
so
we're going to the
far.
French Riviera. So
wow. Let's just.
God knew I needed to be here to do
I
that.
know. Follow her
I
around.
wanna go to France.
Heck yeah. Send pictures, man.
I sure will.
And thanks again for doing this. 8 years. Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Congratulations. And we'll work on that
Thank
shirt
you.
offline, okay?
Yeah, congratulations to you too. And
Thanks,
congratulations to all the ladies that were on here tonight.
Yeah, everybody's rocking it. We're all rocking it and giving hope to all those that are newly diagnosed. So everybody keeps supporting each other for sure.
Yes, many prayers going out to everybody. God bless.
Thank you so much, Courtney. We'll talk to you again in a year, okay? If not sooner.
All right.
All right, take care, girl. See you later. Bye. Bye. Y'all give it up for Courtney. Wow. So cool, man.